You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's quick hitting local insight after every game. You can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra. Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. The Hawks Postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. The Hawks began NBA Cup group play tonight. We'll discuss a big win down at State Farm Arena, and we'll give you our takes on how the Hawks getting out to a great start in Cup play with a 130-123 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight really showcased what they were able to do at both ends of the court. But in particular, not just did they play a pretty well-rounded game, DeShaun, but you said there was one group that stood out for you, and that's the bench, because your take was they won the game.
Absolutely, Tenitra. And you know what? They've been basically winning every single game this season. Yeah. I've noticed over the course of like the last season or two, you know, we had been talking quite a bit about the bench mob, and I feel like we kind of got away from that just a little bit. Part of the reason, I think, not because the bench mob hasn't been doing well, but because we've gotten really accustomed to the bench mob doing so well that it feels like it's just something that comes so naturally for this team. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that I was actually thinking about, and I was like, putting a little bit of a different spin on it, but not being too complicated. I know we didn't really get into the Thanksgiving thing a lot, and I definitely want to ask you this question, and even some of the people to chime in with us in the comment section. What are we thankful for with this Hawks team? What particular area or anything like that? Is there a particular player? Is there a particular coach or a particular stat? Anything. And for me, it's the bench. And one of the reasons why is not just because with that they were able to outscore Cleveland's bench on tonight, but they've just been so big all year long because without having Trey and with Kristaps Porzingis, one of the biggest question marks coming into the season was how much is he really gonna play? And if I'm just being honest, I haven't been really, I've been kind of vocal with how unhappy I have been with him not playing as much as I think he should or could or needs to, or whatever the case may be. But if you think about it, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is technically a bench player. You start thinking about Onyeka Okongwu, who had been primarily a bench player with the exception of last year, brought into the starting lineup. You start thinking about guys like I feel like I'm missing Mohamed Gay. Vic Krejci is another one. Mohamed Gay has stepped up and been really big from an energy standpoint, and all these different guys. I think it's been really, really good for the Hawks that have kind of, some people talk about it in terms of next man up. I know they say that in every sport, every time somebody goes down, and it's not easy to do, especially with number 11 being out of action as long as he has. They've been able to actually put a different kind of perspective and definition on next guy up, and that has been nothing other than the bench mob.
Yeah, and for the Hawks to be in 5th place in the Eastern Conference right now, 12-8, with Kristaps Porzingis not going tonight and him playing, as you mentioned, just 12. And I guess I couldn't say just 12 because we kind of expected that for him to play 12 games out of 20. I mean, it's about 60%. Mm-hmm. That's about right for Kristaps Porzingis. But what is impressive is if you kind of know that you're looking to get about 60 out of 82 games from him, maybe 55 out of 82, you're hoping that you are able to get what you've gotten out of the Hawks so far. And that's been the impressive thing. That has been the encouraging thing, I'm sure, for Hawks fans. But going back to what you said about what I'm grateful for, I would say to be able to have a conversation where we're now right at the cusp. Now, you know how the Hawks are. The Hawks are very stealth when it comes to giving updates and reports. So they'll probably send us a 1 or 2 sentence email in the next day or two. We have evaluated Trae Young. He's progressing. Okay, Hawks.
Okay, thank you.
But as I know we're approaching that 4-week mark on Trae Young's status, the fact that we're having a conversation about the Hawks still being 12-8, them winning 3 out of 4 games, this being a signature win, a quality win against a quality Cleveland Cavaliers team, and to open up group play in a nice fashion a nice statement win like this, yeah, I think that's something to be thankful for. And yeah, we got a couple of our guys who said, hey, Robert Blackman, thankful for the GM and a winning record. Concurred. Absolutely appreciate what the GM has been, what the GM did in the offseason to put a team together like this.
I agree with you, Tenitra. And you know what? You mentioned something about the Cleveland Cavaliers. This isn't just any old Cleveland Cavaliers. This was the #1 seed in the East last year. The team that a lot of people, if not most, had picked to be the front runner for the East this year, along with New York Knicks. I mean, this isn't just, and I don't think that they had anybody out tonight. I think
I was going to say they played
was
all their
out or something
starters.
like that. All of their guys played. And I think that that just goes to show the kind of resiliency at home for the Atlanta Hawks, by the way. And I mentioned that. I put a little extra sauce or emphasis on that because we know that the Atlanta Hawks now, just with this win getting to 500, have been playing so much better on the road, which is pretty, you know, pretty easy to figure out because it seems like all their games have been on the road, but it seems that they've just really been playing better on the road than they had been at home. And I think that that kind of speaks some volume. Like I was saying before, that I'd much rather, if I'm going to struggle somewhere, I'd much rather be struggling at home than I will be on the road because the wins are so much more difficult to come by on the road than they are at home.
And the reason that the wins have not been as much of a struggle on the road is just what you called it. The second unit really standing up and showing themselves, going 10 toes down for this Hawks team, knowing that, hey, when Quinn Snyder calls on a 9-man rotation, he's really going to rotate 9 men. And we're not talking about that 9th man getting like 6 or 7 minutes. Now, if you're rotated in for Quinn Snyder, he's going to give you some decent minutes, probably some double-digit minutes, and is expecting to get something from you. But what I like about the Hawks and what my take was for the Hawks tonight was the fact that they beat Cleveland at their own game. And listen, Cleveland is still going to do Cleveland things, right? They still in the game, shooting nearly 49% from the three-point line. But again, when it mattered most, because the Hawks didn't have a bad night from the three-point line, they still shot 37% from three. But what was impressive was the fact that they were able to do what they did late, because this game tightened up where it was like at 123 to 123, I'm thinking, all right, DeShaun and I need to get ready for overtime because that's where we're going. But the Hawks decided otherwise. The Hawks were able to get some huge three-pointers late in the game to like break the tie. And I think that's where you have to give Zachary Reese-Shea so much credit, because he struggled coming back from that injury, but he hit that big three. Then Jalen Johnson gets a defensive rebound. Then Nickeil Alexander-Walker makes a three, and essentially that's game. So for the Hawks to be able to stand firm and for the Hawks to be able to steady themselves and be as poised as that Cleveland Cavaliers team, and then to beat them at their own game, I think that's just a pretty cool thing to see in the end. And the fact that Jalen Johnson then hits a couple free throws, and the Cleveland Cavaliers theoretically still have a shot, 32 seconds left. They're the best three-point shooting team, I think, in the NBA. But then Evan Mobley misses a three, and that's game. And you got to like that. And then Donovan Mitchell attempts a three that he misses. So again, it's nice not to just get a signature win, but to beat the opponent at their own game feels just a little bit sweeter.
Especially when it's something that is so important as the cup, and how, you know, obviously the Atlanta Hawks had their contention kind of spoiled by, what was it, the Washington Wizards, I think it was the other night.
Yeah.
Well, now the Atlanta Hawks have their opportunity to play spoiler to somebody else to prevent them from cup contention by beating the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I thought that was something really important. I'm just glad to see that. Also, you know, I want to wake something up just really quickly. I know without having Trey, all the signs and fingers is going to point to Jalen Johnson. Congratulations on another triple-double on tonight.
Yes, sir.
I feel like that's becoming a regular thing too. But I just don't think that he's getting enough national attention a lot of times. I know he's getting some, but I don't think he's getting what he deserves, because it's not necessarily what he's doing, but it's also how he's doing it. And I love the fact that outside of him, there's not really one guy that you can pinpoint and say, okay, shut down Jalen Johnson and we're, you know, not going to be able, you know, we'll be able to win the game. Other guys are stepping up. It's not just the same one or two guys. I know Nickeil Alexander has been consistent. Same thing with Onyeka Okongwu, but there's still been some Vit Krejcis in there. There's still been some other guys that have been doing little things to add a number to the left side of the result column. So good job.
Yeah. Very, very nice to see others stepping up, because I was a little concerned. You might know my take a couple nights ago was about Trae Young and the fact that, hey, it's one thing not to have Trae, but when Jalen Johnson is also not hitting on all cylinders, it's another. And I like that the Hawks actually made me take that back tonight.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
We love being wrong.
I was going to say this show does not mind being wrong, because a lot of times if we're wrong, that means that the Hawks course corrected, and that typically means a W. Just like the third quarter starting to be kind of their little thing with this W thing. We'll talk about how the Hawks were able to do it again in the third when we come back. This Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by DoorDash. The NBA season is heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching for the highlights, your fantasy team, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called a bag drop. So every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the next day, and you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired trip, exclusive gear, stuff you actually want. So next time someone goes off for 50, use promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass. Plus, your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only, 50% off up to $10 the day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel. And think about this. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, and there were multiple hot hands that you could ride tonight. It could be Jalen Johnson. It could be someone from the bench pile, but FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks and closeouts like you saw with the Hawks tonight. And you can combine live bets into a same game parlay. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So DeShaun, once again, if we look back to where we were last year, we got something to be thankful for, right? And that is, first and foremost, you guys, our listeners, our audience, our supporters. We appreciate you guys for making this Hawks postcast your first listen of the day. And of course, thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. But we are also thankful for two things. Number one, that we're not having the same conversation about the third quarter or coming out of the half as we did just a season ago and just a couple of days ago. The opening tip did not define the Hawks tonight. Now, yes, it was another slow start, and sometimes that makes us cringe, but you got to give the Hawks so much credit for heating up and keeping that same energy that got them back into a 13-point lead from down early. They kept it the second half, particularly in the third quarter, and that was the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So, DeShaun, you got to love what the Hawks were able to do after literally getting outplayed 39-27 by these Cleveland Cavaliers. And so they go from a 13-point lead to being down 2.5, but they came back strong, 37-28 in that third quarter. And obviously that's essentially the margin of victory for them. They win ultimately by 7 points, but really the way that they played offensively and defensively in that third quarter, going 11 of 13 from the field, taking a 7-point lead into the fourth quarter. That's the kind of thing that you like to see. That's the kind of thing that starts to tell you that the Hawks know how to play and know how to consistently play winning basketball.
Thank God that we're not having, and I don't want to say it too loud because I don't want to revert or retract back to the old ways, but
No.
having to not have a conversation for what feels like just once about the third quarter being the Achilles heel, if you will,
Yes.
for the Atlanta Hawks. And I think the biggest, I guess, blessing of it all is the fact of how they did something, not
Yes.
just what they did, but how they did
Yeah.
it, because
Yep.
they did it on both sides of the ball, which makes
Yes.
it really difficult for a team to be able to do their homework and figure you out. Some teams do it with defense and only defense by getting stops. Some teams do it by putting the ball in the basket and they can't miss a shot on purpose. They're just that good offensively.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
doing it both ways. When you start talking about how they impacted the third quarter on the defensive side of the ball, 0 fast break points in the third quarter as a whole for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah.
That
Crazy.
just goes to show how dynamic the Hawks defense was and how much it was intense, how much it improved, and how much they embraced that side. On the offensive side, 37 points for the Atlanta Hawks in the
Yeah.
third quarter alone, and a plus 14 point I guess margin, if you will, in paint scoring. And we know that
Yes.
Cleveland is not a small team when you start talking about Mobley down low, when you're talking about Allen down low and things like that. Not even just that, but the ability that Donovan Mitchell and some of the others, Garland, have to be able to get into the painted area and score the basketball. What Atlanta was able to do from that standpoint in the paint, I think, was just so huge for them in what catapulted them to ultimately being our turning point for the third quarter tonight.
Yeah, and when you dig into the offensive side of the ball, it is impressive. If you combine all the players, and again, we talked about the 9-player rotation that Quinn Snyder used tonight, the Hawks shot almost 67% from the field in that quarter. They shot almost 38% from three in that quarter. And that, I think, is so huge. And then, like you said, looking at what they were able to do on the defensive side of the ball, they were able to hold the Cleveland Cavaliers to just 44%, when there were times in this game when the Cleveland Cavaliers were shooting in the 60th percentile. The biggest number for me is that 27% from three. For them to be able to hold them to 27% from three in the third quarter is really how they were able to turn the game, because that's how the Cavaliers push. That's where they are the best in the business at it. And just also kind of holding serve, being right there, pretty much even as far as getting boards, also just moving the ball in that quarter. DeShaun, 12 assists for the Hawks, just 4 personal fouls. And I'm okay with that, right? Because that game got chippy here and there.
For
so
sure.
I'm okay with the fact that the Hawks committed 4 personal fouls in that quarter, although Onyeka Okongwu committed 3 of them. But ultimately, hey, Double O was still able to reset himself, gather himself, and contribute in the game. And that's really all that matters. And then, of course, 5 steals in that quarter while committing just 3 turnovers. Flip that, and the Cavs were only able to get 3 steals while the Hawks were able to turn them over 6 times. And all of those little points, all of those pressure points on defense, and then you're able to execute when you get the ball going the other way. I mean, that's why that third quarter was so critical. It was the turning point. And ultimately, especially because we see that they both netted 33 points in the fourth quarter, your third quarter is what won you the game.
For sure. And I'm glad that you mentioned something about Onyeka Okongwu, because, you know, when he went out with the 5th foul, we didn't see him for quite a little while. And you got to remember, that's our only center. And is he really technically a traditional center even anyway?
Right.
But that's where other guys, we start talking about next man up, you know, guys like Mohamed Gay, who in a lot of people's eyes is probably considering him to be more of a G League player still or whatever, what have you, guys having to step up in critical moments. You know, Onyeka Okongwu goes out with his 5th foul, missing extensive time from the game, and the Cleveland Cavaliers start making a run.
Yep.
But he stood into the gap and came back. And that's why when you start seeing the presence of Onyeka Okongwu, not just on the defensive side of the ball, not to say he's a defensive anchor or the biggest rim protector in the world, but also the ability to be able to stretch the defenses with his, you know, shooting ability from the outside, much improved, being a 50-40-90 guy on top of that in the last 9 games. I think you gotta, you know, definitely give him some credit, because I saw 18 games from Onyeka Okongwu. This is starting to feel like a regular occurrence. I remember at one point in time, you see Onyeka Okongwu hit for 18 points. It's like career high. What did he eat for breakfast this morning? What did he have for dinner last night? What was the ingredients in that Thanksgiving dinner? Like, he's on a tear. Now it feels like he's just doing that, and it's just, a regular thing for him. I think that that's a really good thing and a really big plus, a bigger one than people think it is for the Hawks, especially because you don't have Kristaps Porzingis consistently.
Yeah. And then when I kind of look at the in the box score, if you will, we know that Nickeil Alexander-Walker had himself a night. We know that Jalen Johnson had himself a night. You mentioned it earlier, the triple-double, 29 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists, but they also were the driving forces when you look down into who actually powered that third quarter. Jalen Johnson with 11 of his points, 11 of his 29 on the night in that third quarter. And you look, and he kind of decided, hey, I got to take over this game offensively, because on the defensive side, okay, I had only 2 rebounds that quarter, but he had 3 of those 12 assists that quarter. And then you look at 9, you see 10 points for him. Again, he didn't really take control on the defensive side of the ball in that quarter. But to your point earlier, before Onyeka Okongwu got into the foul trouble and Zachary Reese-Sachet as well, those 2 guys really kind of handled the load defensively for the Hawks, which goes to the complementary basketball from both your starters and your bench that you had talked about earlier. Again, that's how you get to a 130-123 win for the Hawks to improve to 12-8 on the season. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.